Kizomba, so I have a special video for you guys today. So I had a special request last month asking for a video about how to play with your basics and make a diagram to kind of help you to understand what's possible. So basically, how to make variations with simple steps. So we've got a really good video with that today, at least I think so. So some of you may not know this, probably most of you. So before I really got into dancing, I was really into different fine arts. So I actually have a master's degree in fine arts, more in installation and sculpture. So I can really visualize very well things in my head, which in three dimension, which some people are not very good at doing. So when I dance, I use that, especially in Kizomba, and I imagine like lines of energy or lines of possibilities, we'll say, when I'm dancing. And I sometimes say that I paint the music on the floor with my feet or my partner's feet. So I never really sat down and thought about how I visualize things when I dance. But because of this request, I did that, and it was a really interesting exercise, so that I would like to share with you guys. But basically, for me, in a dance like Kizomba, every step has so many possibilities, it's almost endless. And if you could look at it that way, like with just different eyes, really, like a step becomes, every step becomes an opening for so many possibilities. So let me explain to you guys what I mean. So we've got our little grid of possibilities here that I created. And why is this important? Well, it's really because if you just do the patterns that you learn in class, you're already always doing the same things, and then you feel yourself becoming boring, and your partners may feel like you're becoming boring because there's not a lot of variety in what you do. Where if you go with this kind of approach, then you're always dancing differently, basically, even if it's just basic steps. So it really adds to your creativity, your self-expression, your musicality, and all of those things, right? Which keeps the dancing way more interesting and playful. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm just going to come closer so you guys can see my little sheet here. So I'm calling it the grid of possibilities, and this would be your 2 feet. And this would be front, so you'd be facing this way, and all the lines are different possibilities of directions that you can take with not actually leaving the center, so always 1 foot in the center. And these are all different things that you can add to the step that you're doing to create variations. So maybe I'll make a picture of that and post it. We'll see how it goes. So I'm just going to leave it there as a little reminder for me of all the things I want to talk about. So we're here. I drew this on the floor with some tape so it can be a little easier for you guys. I did black, I traced it black, the main lines. Okay, so when we're standing in Kizomba with our feet together, like in basic 1, most people think of possibilities being going forward, going sideways, or going back, right? And we can do that with the 2 feet. We can also go from a full step, so going back to forward, right? So we can do a half step, or we can do a full step. So that's basically the start. We can also just change our weight. So we can go forward, change our weight, marca, forward. We can do that to the side. It's always good to practice both feet. And then we can switch it up, right? We can even do several on the same side and then just rock forward and back. Right, if you want to change legs, obviously we need to go through the center. So that's kind of like your cross directions with both feet, and that's the black lines. So after that, to me, we have the easiest one will probably be the diagonals. So the diagonals, if you're running a straight line and we're together with a partner, I would recommend that you twist your upper body while going there so that we stay nice and aligned, and it's a little bit easier. So for me at least, one of the worst things you can do in Kizomba is give your follow two different directions, be it up and out or left, two different, like front and side. So if you wanted to give a diagonal, it's better to turn and then go, because that's actually going to be one direction versus like if you're going here, sometimes it's confusing to the follow. And in Kizomba, usually there's exceptions for everything. So once you open the frame, for example, you can do things, or even in the Saida, like when you're dealing with dissociations and all those rules kind of change a little bit, but I'm talking just in close position in front of each other. So we have basically our 4 diagonals that we can do. All right. And then we have in between, so we don't have to go full diagonal like 45 degrees. We could go like in between, like 25, 30 degrees. So I added that line too. And I did that backwards also. Okay, so that's another pretty easy variation. And I also put little stickers here, because usually in between, like when we're not actually completely sideways, we're a little forward, you could do that, but most of the time we wouldn't necessarily be switching our weight. So I just put some little stickers. So that's your directions. Then we're just gonna go through all your options, and then we're gonna talk about different things about them. So then we have like Estrella or Pulivinho, where we walk around in a circle. So the first step of that would be going forward and then turning your step 45 degrees. So it's not a diagonal. It's a little different because your foot and your body goes through a turning pattern. So you can do that out, or you can do that in on all your steps, right? So you've got this one and this one. And you've got also backwards the same thing, out or in, out, and in. So that's all your turning steps. Then we have other things that you can't necessarily weight transfer on, but that are used. For example, if we're in this position, we could go a diagonal across or a diagonal back. So I've added those in. And of course, we have the same possibilities on the other side of the grid. And then we have one more that I've added here, or actually no, there's 2 more. So we have front and then crossing across here. And of course, we can do that both legs. We can also do it backwards. For obvious reason, we can't do a weight transfer unless we do something with our other foot. But those are definitely lines that we can use to create different possibilities. And that's even just without even moving the 2 feet from the center. So other option would be to do a 45 or a 90 degrees like this, which would end up make us go over here, right? And we could also do that on the other side, and that sends us, but we're still within kind of our grid. So that to me is your main possibilities. I didn't include exceptions and like lifts and things like that because it's a little more complicated, and I don't have a computer program until I do a 3D of everything. So that's all your directional intention stuff. So if you look at the picture, it's all in there. So now, what can we do with that? So because that's just your options. So first thing, of course, is a rock. So we can do our rock by moving basically 90% of our weight forward, 90% back, and coming back together. So that's a very common thing. You can do that backwards or forward or sideways. I'm not going to redo all your directions, but in all your directions you can basically do that. Then we can play with the size of a rock, so we can do a small rock. We don't have to do like a big rock. Alright, maybe I'll leave that a little bit later. We have taps, so we can just do like a 10% touch forward or back. Or sideways, same thing, just a little touch to change your direction. So another option is a bounce. So a bounce is, you don't transfer all your weight and you keep the heel up so you don't drop your heel, but you kind of, I call it a bounce because you kind of like push and bounce off the floor. And we do that a lot for like double time steps. But again, you can do that in any direction. So another one that you can do is a stop. So a stop is kind of in between a bounce and a tap. So I leave my heel up and I tense up my leg, but I don't drop my heel like I would do in a tap, would be less stiff. So when you do a stop, we're like higher up. So if I do it sideways, like if I do a tap, it's more relaxed. If I do a bounce, I'm really like stiffening up. Or not, sorry, not a bounce, a stop. Okay. So that's kind of your options of how to switch your directions from going forward to back or back to forward. So other options that we have that I've already talked about is you can do a half step or you can do a full step. So a full step is going from your back position to your forward position, and a half step is going from the middle out or out to back to the middle. Okay. So third thing that I have here is musicality, and we can work with timing, speed, and all that stuff, right? So I can do the steps on any of these steps. Maybe I'll pick a different step than forward and sideways. So I can play with the speed that I'm doing the step, right? So I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and come back quicker, right? I can go diagonal. So, you know, you can do double time, you can do it 1 time, you can do half time, quarter time, 8 time. You can really play with the speed that you're doing every step. Of course, we want to do something that matches with what's going on in the music right now. That's the end of the song. So, another thing you can play with is the flows, so the different flows. What I call a flow is a different type of energy. So right now I've been doing a regular Kizomba energy where I'm transferring my weight, I'm dropping, I'm doing like a touch and then roll and back, right? So your regular Kizomba walk. So I can change that and I can do something that I call suspension, where I start a little bit down and go over. Possibility. We have also stiff steps that we could use, like And we could also do things like this, stiff steps, for example. And we're still kind of respecting the exercise because we're still in the middle. Another thing that we could do is slides. So slides would be like alright, so we're sliding your feet. It's a little hard with the tape, but it all works. Alright. So that's just 3 examples. Another thing we can play with would be levels. So what I mean by levels is your height in space. So for example, I could do an exaggerated rock to switch your direction and go down, which works really well on slow music. Another thing that we can do is exactly what I'm doing right here, is you can just hang out in your rock, right? You don't always need to be moving your feet. And you can play obviously with timing within your rock. So that would be a possibility of a level where you're going down. Another one would be, of course, sometimes we have heights where we're up on our toes, right? For example. And then we have little, like, suspension is already a little bit down. So we can play a little bit. Obviously, it's a little limited on what you can do with levels, but you can change your height a little bit, which gives you different feelings and lets you express different things in the music. So another thing that you can do is use mini steps. So what do I mean by mini steps? So I mean that we're going to take a lot of little steps, which is perfect in music right now. So we can play with that, right? So you got 2 different types of mini steps. For me, you have ones that you push off the floor, and then you have your suspension mini steps where you go up and touch, up and touch, up and touch. So depending on the feeling, you can always change that. And again, we can do that on any of the steps. Right, so you can even play, as I said, on the kind of diagonal ones, on the basically, these are used a lot for like pushes. So, we got those. So again, it's this stiffness or suspension. Then we have adding styling. So we can add styling or jinga movements on any of the steps, right? So I can walk and do for example, right? So I can add some style, I can also add some arms, or depending on what's happening within what the lead and follower are doing together and the music. So, another thing that you can play with, which we'll call lyrical, is you can play with your step within your step. So that's maybe a little bit more advanced concept, but I don't need to do my whole step the same speed, right? And I, just like I was doing, probably the easiest one to understand is if I have a slow step, like kind of lazy rock, I can play with it. Play with the speed. I can go really slow and I can go faster. I can make it stiff. I can play with the movement. So usually you can do that better on slow steps because you have more time to think about those things, but you don't have to do your step the same way every time. So I could go slow and fast, right? So I can play with those kind of things to usually to follow the melody or some lyrical part in the music works really well, because if not, the beats are pretty straight. So that really allows for other feelings to be created. So another thing that you can play with is your marcas. So if you've done any Kizomba, especially traditional, you should know that you already have two options. So you have, and I'll do, actually, let's just do a basic 5. So we have a marca here, which is your regular marca. So usually we know already that we can do a double time step instead. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and it allows us to add more jinga if we want, and just like a different energy. So that's one option to replace your marca. So another option would be to do a stop or a hold, like we were talking about here, but we can do them together and just kind of hold. So I'm touching my foot, but I'm not actually pushing up, right? And I'm stiffening my legs. So I'm also with my knee stopping my follow. So we're just like doing a stop. And sometimes that's used to lead some body movement also. So that's another thing that you can do. You can also do a hovering step to change your direction instead of doing a marca. So what I mean is I'm here, I want to go forward, so instead of doing any weight transfer, I'm just going to hover and go. Hover and go. So we use that a lot, so not necessarily in steps like that, but for example, for a box step, I'm always coming together and going to the side. I don't usually go directly to the side because it's, again, giving two directions at the same time, and it's hard to keep it clean and clear. So every time I change my direction, but I don't want to do a marca, I bring my feet together and then go. So that's another thing that you can do. Okay. Alright, so now a couple more things. So first of all, this is of course just on the spot, right? And obviously you can't move it around with me on the floor, sadly. But this is possibilities that exist every step. So if I step here, and then I put my weight and then I'm going to keep walking, basically, if you imagine I was there, I still have all those new possibilities that open up to me again. So every step I take, this is under me on every step. So I have all those options. Whichever leg that my weight is on, basically under me is this, if you can imagine it in your head. Right? So I'm here, and now suddenly it's here around me, and it's here around me, right? So I have all these options. So I'm here, and I can go here. I can go here. You know, I can do this. So every step is like that. So if you can imagine, it's just following you under your steps as you're walking. And it's giving you so many options. But of course, it's easier at first to practice it just under yourself, always one foot in the same direction, just to really get used to all the options you have and to be able to picture it in your head as you're dancing. And the other thing that happens is that when you are dancing with a partner, if you're in a close position, your partner is basically has the same angle as you, right? And also, actually, I want to mention also that it turns, right? So if suddenly you're facing this way, you would just turn, imagine you're turning this to face the front. And then the same thing, you're here, it doesn't matter if it's a diagonal step, you're here now, you know? So it's just following you in all directions. And when you're dancing with a partner in close positions, it's just basically under both of you, and we're both kind of following the same thing. But as soon as you open the frame, then suddenly my follow is facing here, and I'm facing here, so mine would be turned this way, and hers is still facing that way. So she has the options facing this way, but you have your options facing that way. And of course, if we're close, sometimes there's options I can't really do because I'm in her space. But you can kind of picture the options that you have. So that's how, when I get to open position, how I think when I'm dancing. It's like I have all these things that, the directions that I can lead my follow into. Other thing is, many of the follows don't understand all these options, especially in open position. In closed position, it's a little easier. So when I dance with someone, depending on their level, all these options are available to me or not, right? So if I see that she can't find her diagonal, or I can't tap and do this because she doesn't understand that signal. So then I take some of the lines away and I dance the dance with just the main lines, you know, that I know she's going to be able to execute. So when you're dancing with a really good follow, if I'm leading, then you feel like you're free because you have all your options and even more that you, if you can imagine them, right? Because there are different flows, and there's, as I said, exceptions to all of this that add more options, but I think that's probably plenty for you guys. So that's all of that. I just want to mention before we finish that, like, all the 10 options at the bottom here that we talked, they're there for all your dancing, right? It doesn't matter if you're in a Saida. It doesn't matter if you're in a basic 4. So maybe we'll do basic 4 just for you guys to kind of have it in your mind. Of course, we're not going to be able to follow this, but if I do a basic 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So what can I do? So I can do all those 10 things. I'm not going to do all of them, but so instead of like taking the full steps, I can play with it before I actually transfer my weight. I can slow it down, I can speed it up, I can stop, I can do multiple steps. Technically, I'm still doing a basic 4 because I'm taking 3 steps forward, the third one being a rocking step forward and back. So I don't want to do basically, and I've done this actually in classes, that I've done a whole song without repeating myself and just doing like basic 4 the whole song, but never doing it the same way. So you can do like a whole song with just one basic and never doing the same thing, just like you can do whole songs with what I've talked to you about today and definitely not repeat yourself. Of course, it is nice to flow around and do some shuffle steps and some saidas and stuff and have, you know, some dynamics on the floor with your dancing, but there's also a lot you can do with just this. And within your flow on the floor, if you can imagine that under yourself, then you have all these options to slow down your steps. So if you're doing a Saida, the same thing. You can slow down, you can speed up, right? You can play with rocks, with mini steps, all these things, right? Now I want to say that all these 10 things are all techniques, and I haven't broken down any of them. I do have a video on Musicality that has a little bit more information on levels already. But they're all techniques that need to be worked on to be able to integrate them in your dancing. So learning the step to me is just the first step. So it's kind of like when you're building a house and you've built the foundation of the house. It doesn't look like much, but it's really, really important. So the steps are that, really, your foundation steps of a dance. And then you're building, you know, the building and then decorating it and all those things, and then putting furniture. So that's kind of the 10 things that we talked about here that make a home, or a house a home, and your own dancing unique, and every song different, right? So those are really good things to work on, and you know, just with the 5 basics and this, you know, grid exercise, you can have wonderful musical songs and not know even shuffle steps, right? Or virgulas, however you want to call them. So this is like, to me, is like really useful and important, and it's just different aspects of your dancing. So yes, the walking pasarems or pasadas are one aspect of the dance, but how you're dancing those steps is a whole other thing, and then we have 10 different options of how to dance those steps, right? So, and they're all things to work on, so you get better at them. And every one of those 10 things helps you to express the music better. So yes, there's a step, but to dance that step, you need to do something that matches with your music. right? So, and then you can probably fake a lot of those things by yourself, but you also need to be able to give the correct intention to your partner so you can do those different flows and different timings together. So, although I love all this stuff, it's also a lot of things and a lot of information. And yeah, it's definitely things that you need to work on, but it's, yeah, wonderful. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it kind of opens up your world of possibilities and gives you, you know, ideas of how to train differently and how to open up your mind to the possibilities that are there when you're dancing. Because to me, every step has so many possibilities in your dance. It's never just a saída. So for me, in Kizomba, we're walking. 99% of the time, we're walking. Either that or transferring our weight on the spot, you know? We're either going somewhere or we're on the spot. Most of the time, unless we're doing some lifts or something special, right? So in every step are all these possibilities. So yeah, just keep yourself open-minded and explore the possibilities, you know? And as I was saying, both as a lead and follow, we need to know this stuff, because if you're not familiar with it, as a follow, it's going to be hard to follow all these possibilities and all the lines and the directions, you know? So anyway, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.